CM Punk plans for the new AEW Saturday primetime wrestling show may have possibly been revealed. Speaking of CM Punk, Chris Jericho may have commented publicly about his desire to work or maybe not work with the former AEW World Champion in the future. A big update on a huge number of AEW pre-sale sign-ups for the All-In special event in London's Wembley Stadium. Details on that, plus Matt Hardy opens up about skepticism surrounding Jeff Hardy's return to AEW television this week, an update on when FTR signed brand new AEW contracts, just how long has Brian Cage signed on with AEW for with his new contract deal. Also an update on a match that seemingly is planned for AEW Double or Nothing. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling. I know we've done quite a few AEW videos recently. There is a WWE news video coming later today with plenty of big news before tonight's edition of Friday Night SmackDown on Fox. But we've got to get into the latest development when it comes to CM Punk. Lots happening with him in AEW. Plans seemingly for Punk's return to All Elite Wrestling firmly in motion. A tentative date of June 21st at the Wintrust Arena in Chicago for the final Dynamite prior to the Forbidden Door pay-per-view, and we may know what plans could be for him as he returns to AEW with a new Saturday show being introduced. Not because Punk's coming back, that was always going to happen, but certainly Punk could be heavily featured on that show and kept separate from the Elite, that being Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. The biggest development in the over 8th-month CM Punk AEW saga seemingly came yesterday, when Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select would report that plans were tentatively agreed between the two parties for Punk to return to the company. While Punk's rumoured return date was revealed in the report as June 21st in Chicago, as were details over potential meetings with Chris Jericho, one other interesting tidbit was that AEW's roster could be set for a sort of soft draft split in order to keep separate people who had issues with others backstage, and of course Punk would be one of them, to get some separation between people that maybe had issues with each other. Now, this rumoured split of the roster would coincide with the much rumoured new addition to AEW's television schedule on a Saturday evening, potentially titled AEW Collision, based on a recent trademark filing. Again, that's what the rumoured show rumors what it's going to be. You can see on the screen right there, actually the filing itself with the US Patent and Trademarks Office on the screen there. AEW Collision is the rumoured name for this Saturday show. Now, discussing the whole situation in the Wrestling Observer newsletter is Dave Meltzer, who would potentially reveal AEW's plans for Punk and this new Saturday broadcast, saying, quote, "The working idea was that the Saturday show would star Punk and that they would split crews to a large degree. History does show that the splitting crews never last long, but in this case, the idea is to ease the dressing room problems. In a sense, those who have not made up with each other would be kept on different crews and wouldn't have to interact with each other. We're not sure if it's TBS or TNT, but if it is TNT, there would be a lot of sports preemptions, and if it's TBS, there will be some. It also means it goes head-to-head with major sports almost every week, including UFC most weeks and UFC pay-per-view shows 12 to 13 times a year. College football at fall, almost every major boxing show, every major sport at one time or another, and WWE pay-per-view shows nearly every month since WWE is trying to move its major events from Sundays to Saturdays as much as possible. In terms of the show itself, perhaps surprisingly, AEW may look to provide a show similar in length and star power to that of their premiere broadcast, Dynamite." Meltzer said, quote, "The original idea was for the show to be a 2-hour show that would have the equal star power of the Wednesday show. Of course, until it's announced, nothing is official. While things seem to be heading in the right direction for a Punk AEW return, things are reportedly far from settled down when it comes to the backstage issues, but certainly it is interesting that this AEW Saturday show could be centered around Punk again. They're not creating this show because of his return. It was going to happen regardless, but AEW may use it as a way to kind of split their roster into two somewhat separate entities." Now, one person that CM Punk does have issues with, of course, is Chris Jericho. We spoke earlier today about the planned meeting between the two that has been requested by CM Punk to see if the two stars could work together in the future. The news is currently flooded with brand new CM Punk AEW return reports, with the latest from Fightful Select claiming that Punk and AEW have tentatively agreed on the return of the controversial former two-time AEW World Champion. The latest report also states that the belief is that Punk is willing to work with many of the individuals who he has famously clashed with in the past, including, of course, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. As for Chris Jericho specifically, Fightful has also reported that there was a meeting planned between Jericho and Punk in order to see if the two working together is a possibility in the future. In response to a fan claiming Jericho has always been willing to work with everyone if it's best for business, Jericho would respond with a very interesting comment saying, quote, "Not everyone." The post, pictured on the screen right now, would be accompanied by a picture of both Punk and Jericho seated together for commentary on an episode of AEW Rampage back in 2021. Both Punk and Jericho are known to not get along, with the former a subject of Punk's recent Instagram tirade in which he called him a stooge and reports that Jericho told Punk he was a cancer to the locker room after the incident at All Out last year. Of course, if we get any more updates on this, we'll let you know. What is also worth pointing out when it comes to Jericho and social media, he could always be working, and this meeting may have already taken place. So Jericho, as the initial tweet does, says he knows what's best for business. He knows what's best, certainly as well, for Chris Jericho. And if that's working with CM Punk to be in the main event, to make money, Jericho's going to do it. Now, there has been so much discussion, hasn't there, since the AEW All In London show was announced at Wembley Stadium. Can the small company, or the new company that is AEW, sell out Wembley Stadium in London, in the UK, with over 90,000 people possibly being able to attend the show? Well, AEW's UK debut in London at Wembley Stadium for the second edition of All In is set to have a crazy pre-sale. Tony Khan announced last week that AEW would be holding All In at Wembley Stadium, much to the immediate delight of the AEW UK fans who have been waiting for years for AEW to finally make their UK debut. With the stadium being one of the biggest in all of Europe, holding probably around close to 100,000 for a wrestling setup, many question Tony Khan's big ambition in booking the venue, and there has been a lot of talk about how many tickets AEW can realistically sell for the event. In an update last week, Dave Meltzer noted there was over 25,000 signups for the pre-sale on the first day it was available. Now, another week later, Dave Meltzer has provided a new update in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, writing, quote, "Based on the number of people who have signed up for a code to purchase tickets for the pre-sale on May 2nd, 8 days after the announcement of the show, which broke 45,000 on April 13. There is a lot of confidence the show will be a success." So that number, once again, 45,000 pre-sale signups. That's just signups alone. And if you use the idea that they might buy more than one ticket, that's already getting close to around 90,000. It's a very promising number just to see that people have signed up to the pre-sale. The demand in the UK for an AEW show has always been high since the company's inception. In addition to that, it's not just people in the UK that would be attending. It would be all across Europe and, frankly, maybe even all over the world to come to Wembley for a big event, for a big stadium show, AEW's first big stadium show that hasn't been in Arthur Ashe Stadium, and will certainly be the largest attendance ever to see an AEW event. Now, prior to this event being announced, when it came to this UK debut, someone speculated it would be at Craven Cottage in London, which is a smaller stadium, but it's a stadium that is owned by the Khan family and is the home to Fulham Football Club. There were reportedly, according to Dave Meltzer, a lot of reasons why AEW didn't book Craven Cottage for their UK debut. There were logistical reasons, the building being in a residential neighborhood, lighting and staging issues. It's still said to be an idea that Tony Khan wants to do someday. And thinking about it from that perspective, if you're not familiar with Craven Cottage and Fulham, unless you're here in the UK or you are a Premier League fan or a Fulham fan, that is, it's a very, very, very old stadium. It's undergoing renovations right now, but a lot of the stadiums, particularly the older ones over here in the UK, they're built in residential areas, and there are plenty of laws in place about sound and about how long things can go into the night for events, etc. So it might just be difficult when it came to some logistical issues, but I wouldn't be surprised, of course, if in the future they do decide to run it, because as I mentioned, Tony Khan, he owns it, or the Khan family certainly do, so it might be something that they do in the future. Now, a big story this week as well was Jeff Hardy's return to All Elite Wrestling, making his return on this week's edition of AEW Dynamite. Jeff Hardy made his return to save his brother Matt Hardy and Isaiah Cassidy from a beating from the firm's Big Bill and Lee Moriarty, footage of which can be seen during Dynamite. Given the past issues of Jeff Hardy, some have taken exception to the return, leading to Matt Hardy sharing his thoughts on the skepticism. Speaking on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy podcast, Hardy said, quote, "This is the most work I've ever seen him do on himself. He had 10 months. He seems different. I don't want to sit here and vouch for him. I don't want you to take my word for it or take anyone else's word from it. Watch him and follow his actions. He'll make you a believer. I am confident that his actions, conduct, and behavior will make people a believer. He's made me a believer. I've seen a lot of him and gotten to follow his journey, and I know the work he's put in and how dedicated he's been to legitimately changing and trying to get his shit together once and for all. I'm so extraordinarily proud of him. He's done great. Everyone was happy to see him. He's happy to be there. It was so adorable. Right before we went out, he was so nervous and so worried because he hadn't been in the ring at all. He came out to my house on Monday, got in the ring, ran the ropes, took a few bumps. He was worried how the people were going to react to him. Jeff is one of the few individuals who has it and people are connected to him. When he came out and the people went nuts and were cheering and chanting, it was great. A magical moment. Really glad we got to this point and very excited to see where we go forward from here." Hardy would concede that Jeff does have to prove himself given his past, concluding, quote, "Coming off his past, he has stuff to prove to people. I'm the ultimate optimist. My mentality doesn't work for everybody, but I say people change, give them a chance, especially if they've legitimately put the work in and have tried. I do that with everybody. Either he'll prove you wrong or prove you right. I have a very good feeling about this point Jeff is at in his life." So Matt Hardy saying, watch him because Jeff Hardy will prove himself. Now, when it comes to how this whole return came together as well, speaking on the same podcast, Matt Hardy said, quote, "This literally came together in the last few days. We've been talking about this for a while. Jeff's eye will take a while. I kept making jokes. How did you fly here today? Did you take a red eye? Ha 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 ha. He still has blood in his eye. They said he would probably take 6 to 8 weeks. I put it out there in 6 to 8 weeks. He should be good. His vision is fine. His eyes are stable. They're working in sync now. He got cleared at the end of last week just to do stuff physically. We had an idea of bringing him in and interjecting him into this scenario. The segment cut a little short, but here's a spoiler. Watch Rampage on Friday and you'll find out where this match is going to be and who the official competitors are. Jeff will be involved. Hook will be involved. Isaiah will be involved. You'll find out who from the firm will face on Rampage. So Matt Hardy saying it's come together, but Jeff was cleared for physicality, but as was reported earlier, he's not going to be wrestling for a while as he fully recovers from this eye surgery. Now, speaking of new contracts, etc., FTR, they've re-signed with AEW for 4 more years. The announcement was made along with revealing they plan to retire after this contract period on AEW Rampage. That'll be airing tonight on TNT. Howard has discussed the reasoning for the tag team to stay under the Tony Khan umbrella, describing it as the best course of action. Dave Meltzer has provided further details of the contract and an indication of when it was actually signed. In the current issue of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Meltzer writes, quote, "FTR commented on them signing a new deal with AEW instead of WWE. On Rampage, they said it was a 4-year contract. It should be noted that we were told months ago that the deal was already done and everything public was an angle given the storyline with the Belts versus leaving the company, and due to that, nobody could say so publicly." And that was the rumor, wasn't it? It was the rumor that they had been signed to AEW contracts for a while, they were sticking around for a while, and they weren't going anywhere, which is indeed the case. Speaking of new contracts, Brian Cage also recently signed a new AEW contract. We've also got an update on how long he has signed for. Cage's prior deal with AEW reportedly expired in early March, with him agreeing to a short extension to see him through to the Ring of Honor Supercard of Honor show on March 31st, where he and the Gates of Agony defended their ROH 6-man tag team championships against AR Fox, Blake Christian, and Metalik. While many expected them to drop the titles due to Cage's uncertain contract situation, they would retain, leading many to believe a new deal had been agreed. While he was said to be working without a contract following Supercard of Honor, Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select reported that a new multi-year deal had been agreed earlier this week. And now, courtesy of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, we know the exact amount of years Cage has signed on for, courtesy of Dave Meltzer. Quote, "As expected by recent results, Brian Cage has signed a new 5-year deal at AEW. So reportedly, that new deal is for 5 years. Cage had recently become affiliated with Swerve Strickland on AEW TV as part of a merger between the Mogul affiliate and the Embassy to create, you guessed it, the Mogul Embassy. Who would have thought it? Finally, speaking of Swerve Strickland, we know, seemingly, according to reports, when he's set to face Keith Lee. A planned match for AEW Double or Nothing on May 28, 2023 has been confirmed to be taking place according to a new report. Keith Lee returned to AEW on the February 17 episode of AEW Rampage and set his sights on Swerve Strickland. The pair are yet to actually have their eventual one-on-one encounter. However, with Lee most recently having faced Chris Jericho on this week's episode of Dynamite in the main event, Swerve Strickland got involved and cost him the match. Dave Meltzer has now addressed the current plan in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, stating, quote, "The plan right now is to hold off the first Keith Lee versus Swerve Strickland match until the pay-per-view. So it's seemingly we're going to see Strickland versus Lee take place in Las Vegas. AEW Double or Nothing takes place over Memorial Day weekend on the May 28 in the T-Mobile Arena in Paradise, Nevada. This will be the second time that Double or Nothing has been held in the venue and the fifth time that the pay-per-view has run. So seemingly, we're going to be getting the former tag team champions square off at that pay-per-view. But there you go, guys. That's the latest AEW news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe bottom right-hand corner. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Remember, you can join the WN365 roster by clicking that join button, and I'll speak with you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.